Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. My family has owned a small farm just outside the city limits for over 50 years now. It started with my grandfather buying the land and slowly building it up into a prosperous vegetable farm that supported his family. When my dad took over, he expanded into raising chickens and goats too. Now the farm is in my hands, and I've tried to keep the old ways alive while also making some updates here and there. One of the most special things on our farm is an antique tractor that's been with us for ages. My grandpa bought it, used back in the 1960s, and it's been chugging along ever since. That rugged old tractor has plowed and planted more rows on our land than I could ever count. It's like a member of the family after all these years. Sure, it's noisy and smelly and leaks fluids, but I can't imagine farming without it. I do regular maintenance and repairs to keep it running. A few years back, some developers bought up the land around us and put in a bunch of cookie-cutter houses, instantly surrounding our little farm with a subdivision. Most of the folks who moved in were nice enough, but the whole vibe of the area changed. Not long after the houses went in, one of the new neighbors decided to start a homeowners association. From what I gathered, the homeowners association was supposed to keep up the common areas and make sure folks followed certain rules about their properties. I tried to be neighborly and introduce myself to the homeowners association board members at one of their first meetings, but I got the cold shoulder. They made it pretty clear the homeowners association was for subdivision residents only and had no interest in including my farm. I shrugged it off and figured they could do their thing and I'd do mine. Trouble started when the homeowners association board decided to crack down on eyesores in their perfect little neighborhood. I started getting letters in the mail about my unsightly farm equipment and the offensive noises and smells. They demanded I remove or conceal my tractor, baler, disc harrow, and more from view. Now, these weren't just random yard tools. They were necessary equipment I used every day to keep the farm running. I tried to reason with them that the sights and sounds were just part of living near a working farm, but they didn't see it that way. The Homeowners Association president was a real piece of work named Susan, who acted like she was the queen and everybody had to bow to her rules. No matter how politely I explained my position, she insisted I needed to comply or face penalties. Things escalated when I came home from selling produce at the farmer's market one Saturday and found my tractor missing from the barn. There was broken glass on the ground from where they jimmied open the door. The big sliding barn doors were crashed open, and skid marks led out where they dragged it away. I was instantly fuming. That tractor was irreplaceable. I jumped in my truck and went speeding around the neighborhood looking for any sign of it. Finally, I spotted it parked awkwardly in the ditch behind Susan's house. I banged on her front door and demanded to know why she had stolen my tractor. She calmly explained the homeowners association had deemed it abandoned since it was parked unused for over a week. According to her, that meant they could claim it as an eyesore and dispose of it as they saw fit. She lectured me that I only had myself to blame for leaving farm equipment littering the neighborhood for so long. I tried to explain that I'd been using the tractor every day. She must have just missed seeing me out in the field, but Susan didn't want to hear it. She insisted it was abandoned property on homeowners association land, and therefore belonged to them now. At that point I was seeing red. I told Susan in no uncertain terms that she had criminally trespassed and stolen my property. I said I was calling the police immediately to report the theft. All of a sudden, Susan became very cooperative and apologetic. She pleaded with me not to get law enforcement involved. She agreed to give me back my tractor and forget the whole misunderstanding ever happened. I made sure she understood if anything like this happened again, I wouldn't hesitate to press charges. I towed my poor tractor home and hugged it like a long-lost pet when it was back safe in the garage. I replaced the busted lock on the barn, too. After that fiasco, I decided to erect a privacy fence all around my property. I couldn't take any chances that the homeowners association would pull something like that again. They kept sending me nasty grams about my eyesore farm, but I just tossed the letters straight into the trash where they belonged. No way was I going to let that bunch of busybody bullies dictate what I could or couldn't do on my own darn land. The cherry on top was a few weeks later when I offhandedly mentioned the tractor theft incident to my buddy Leon, who works down at the courthouse. He let me know that legally the homeowners association had no authority over my private property at all, whether they considered it abandoned or not. I could have called the cops that first day and had them all charged with trespassing and grand theft auto. Knowing I could have landed Susan and her cronies in jail if they tried something like that again gave me a big sense of satisfaction. In the couple years since, they've mostly left me alone aside from the occasional snarky letter. I just keep on farming the way my grandpa and dad did before me. Vintage tractor and all. The homeowners association ladies still turn up their noses when they drive past my chickens and goats. But at this point I just find it funny. As long as they don't set foot on my land again, we'll get along fine. I may have 30 more years of farming left in me, and that old tractor's probably good for another 32 if I keep taking good care of it. The next one is a pro-revenge story. A few years back, my old car was on its last legs. My mechanic said it wouldn't last much longer, and the best thing to do was to sell it cheap and move on before it gave out and was ready to be scrapped. I loved that little car, but I put it up on Craigslist for $500 and got a response. The guy buying it was in his 20s with a pregnant wife, and his dad was footing the bill. I was clear with them that it was sold as is, and I couldn't make any promises about its longevity. The buyer said that if it lasted 6 months, he'd be happy with the purchase. So he signed the bill of sale, and I handed over the title. I immediately went to the DMV website and registered it as a sale, assuming he would finish the process by transferring the title. Turns out, I was wrong about two things. The car lasted much longer than 6 months, and he didn't bother to pay the $77 to transfer the title. I discovered this when I received a photo radar ticket for running a red light. I was confused because the street was way across town in an area I rarely visit. When I went online to view the high-res traffic cam photos, I found it was the buyer in my old car, but my name was still attached to the plates. After some serious frustration, I copied all the records, dates, bill of sale, etc., and mailed copies off to the courthouse. It was his citation, but I had to prove it to the court. 2 weeks later, I got another letter from the police. Another ticket, this time for speeding. Same driver, same car, same plates with my name still attached. Again, I had to copy all the paperwork, write a long letter to the clerk, and mail it all off to the courthouse. The third ticket really made me mad. I started making calls and discovered that this scam is pretty common. Some folks buy a junker and rack up fines until they wreck or abandon the car, and their name was never on it, so nobody bothers to punish them for it. It's all on the previous owner to clean up the mess and prove who was at fault. This time, I wrote an extra long letter to the court clerk and did a little research to include the guy's picture, home address, and listed phone number. A few months went by and I thought it was over. Heck, the car should have given out by now anyway. But then the fourth ticket arrived, showing him in high-res zipping past a radar cam in my old car with my old bumper sticker still on the back, and all his kids piled into the back seat. The fifth and sixth tickets felt like Groundhog Day. I didn't even bother to put the paperwork away. I kept it out on my desk, ready to copy. By the time the seventh ticket arrived, we were well over a year beyond the sale, and enough was enough. This wasn't just some dude forgetting to do some paperwork or not knowing the right way to go about buying a car. This was intentional. It was time for some pro-revenge. First, I called the police and after a week of back and forth finally spoke with a traffic cop who said, "Enough is enough," and went to pay the guy a visit. He said he couldn't disclose what would happen during that discussion, but the total amount of the likely unpaid traffic tickets was enough to get his attention. The tickets and late fees were several times the value of the car. That wasn't enough. Just having to pay his tickets wasn't appropriate for the 7 times I had to copy that bill of sale for the court clerk. So I started going back through my records of every ticket and every photo, and I found an interesting theme. In every photo, his small kids were in the car, including the newborn infant, all packed into the back seat. I called Child Protective Services anonymously. I didn't provide any information that was not 100% factual and verifiable. The tickets showed that this guy was operating an identity fraud scheme out of his home, essentially stealing my identity and who knows how many others. His children were present throughout. Furthermore, he regularly violated traffic rules and put his children in serious danger by speeding, running red lights, and committing other traffic violations. If he was doing this stuff so often, in front of a camera, how do you think he was driving when he wasn't being watched? I declined to provide my name or number, as I had nothing more to offer and didn't want to be involved in the case any further. I gave them all the evidence I had of 3 small children, in repeated dangerous and illegal situations, all of which were verifiable by photo evidence and court documents. After that, I stopped getting traffic tickets from him. Maybe the car finally gave out. The next one is a petty revenge story. My fiancé is a server at a local brewery. Yesterday, a local church wanted to have a fundraiser there so that people would come in, buy food, and some of the money would go to the charity. It's the basic drill of how a fundraiser works. Well, one of the customers ordered French onion soup. The restaurant offers soups in bread bowls if desired, but due to the fundraiser and the crowd, they ran out. The French onion soup lady really wanted that bread bowl. My fiancé told her, "I'm sorry, we just ran out, but I can bring you a regular bowl and some bread on the side if you like." However, this wasn't satisfactory for her. She insisted on having her bread bowl. She then asked, "What are you going to do about it? I always get the bread bowl." My fiancé repeated, "I can serve it in a regular bowl and provide bread on the side for you." That solution wasn't acceptable to her, but there was nothing more to be done, so she settled for the bowl. She didn't even take the bread, perhaps because it wasn't served in a bowl. Later, she flagged down my fiancé to inform her that she always gets cheddar cheese on top of her soup, something the restaurant doesn't offer because they don't have grated cheddar cheese. They only have a block of cheddar that they hand chop. My fiancé responded, "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Let me go take care of that." Throughout the meal, there were a few other minor issues with this lady's order, such as the absence of straws and other trivial complaints. Towards the end of the meal, my fiancé informed the manager about the table, anticipating a potential complaint and explaining the situation. The manager, aware that she was part of the fundraiser, decided to address the issue directly. He approached the table and said to the lady, "Ma'am, I heard there were some issues with your soup today. I'm truly sorry about that. To make it up to you, we've removed it from your bill." Then he left. The irony was that the lady's purpose for dining there was to support the charity through her purchase. However, due to her difficult behavior, the manager removed the soup from the bill, meaning she didn't contribute to the charity, which surely didn't reflect well on her in front of her church and friends. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened in 2014. I had just lost my job and was in the process of looking for a new one. However, I didn't have much money saved to pay bills in the meantime. So I asked my father if I could borrow $1,200 to get me through to the next month, promising to pay him back as soon as I started working again. He sent the money, I paid my bills, and soon after I found a new job. As soon as I had the money to repay him, I used my bank's online bill pay option to send him a check. I sent him a text to inform him that it was on its way, and assumed that was the end of it. A week passed, and he hadn't received it. I thought it might have taken a few days for the bank to process the bill pay option since I hadn't used it before, so I asked him to wait a few more days to see if it would arrive. Several days later, it still hadn't arrived. I contacted the bank, and they informed me that I could stop payment on it for free. So I did, and then wrote a personal check and mailed it to him, assuming something had gone wrong with the online bill pay. About 2 months later, I received a check in the mail for $1,200 from a medical facility in the state where my father resides. I called them to inquire, and they informed me on a recorded line that it was an overpayment on an account my father had with them. They assured me it was a legitimate check and was mine to keep. At that moment, I didn't connect it with the bill pay incident from a couple of months prior. I called my father to ask about his accounts with this facility because there was no reason they should have my address to send me an overpayment if he had made one. He was clueless because he hadn't used that facility in years. I researched the facility on Google and it finally clicked. My father's address was on Saddlewood Drive at that time. However, when I entered it into bill pay, my phone auto-corrected it to Sandalwood, which coincidentally had the same numerical address. Since my father's name was listed as the payee, they mistakenly tried to apply it to his account. That's where my check had gone. I attempted to call them again to explain the situation, but the lady on the phone was very dismissive. She said, "I've already talked to you about this. I don't know why you're calling again. We sent you what we owed you. This account is settled and we will not discuss it further." This was on a recorded line. I asked if she was certain they owed me this money. She emphatically replied, "Yes." I just smiled and ended the call. I deposited the check that day. They didn't contact me again until about 6 weeks later. I had been curious about how long it would take them to realize their mistake. A different lady called to inform me that an error had been made, and that I owed them $1,200. I told her she was mistaken, and advised her to listen to the recorded calls I had made to their office, providing her with the dates. I had been reassured multiple times that the money was mine, and that I was free to cash the check. After that, I ended the call. I haven't heard from them since. The next one is an entitled people story. I am 23 years old, and I am a very reserved person. I don't like to interact with other people, but I don't hate anyone. I have never been angry with a person because I assume that if you don't interfere with my life, everything is fine. I have, however, always been very close to my 17-year-old brother, even though he is very different from me. He's athletic, sociable, and so on. We have always shared our belongings since birth. Recently, he has started to become the little boss of the house. His parents buy him everything he wants despite his poor grades. He smokes, drinks, and has started to treat me like a personal chauffeur. This creates a tense atmosphere in the house, with my mother often yelling at him. Fortunately, I bought my dream computer after a lot of hard work, costing more than $5,000. Every night I lock myself in my room, either coding or playing video games. It's my quiet time between my demanding engineering studies and the home environment. Then I began a 6-month internship in a big city in another country. Initially, I struggled because I had never left my small town. Living alone in an apartment was challenging, but after a few weeks, I underwent a surprising transformation. I began enjoying social outings, felt more confident, and even updated my wardrobe to look more mature. An added bonus was that I started working out in my free time since I didn't have my computer. At the end of my internship, I returned home to the same tense atmosphere. No one seemed to notice my changed appearance. I brushed it off, and that night all I wanted was to retreat to my computer. However, when I entered my room, my computer was missing. I asked my mother about it, and she informed me that my brother had sold it. I was in disbelief. After a few moments, I asked if she was joking. She wasn't. Rage filled me. I confronted my brother, demanding an explanation. He nonchalantly mentioned he sold it to buy sneakers and clothes. When I pressed him further, emphasizing that the computer was essential for my work, he laughed it off, suggesting I could easily buy another one and that $1,000 was insignificant to me. When he revealed he sold my $5,000 computer for only $1,000, I lost control. In my anger, I grabbed his laptop and smashed it on the floor. The commotion drew our parents. My brother, bewildered, questioned my behavior. I shouted back, explaining his wrongdoing. My father tried to downplay the situation, saying it was just a computer. Furious, I told him to recognize the gravity of the situation. I left in anger and reported the theft to the police. Given the computer's value, my now 18-year-old brother faced potential jail time. My parents pleaded with me to drop the charges, but I felt betrayed by them. I pursued the case, and my brother was ordered to repay me $5,000 plus my legal fees. He was supposed to perform community service to settle his debt, but my parents covered the cost. Now most of my family resents me. I've severed ties with them and currently live with a cousin. I'm nearing graduation and look forward to starting my career. I eagerly await the day I can leave and never see my family again. Their lack of support doesn't bother me. I believe my actions taught my brother a valuable lesson about the importance of hard work. Recently, my mother reached out, but I advised her to leave my father if she wanted happiness, assuring her of my support. I hope she makes the right decision. The next one is an entitled parent story. We have a sizable vegetable garden in the backyard of my family's house. My mom and I are the gardeners, and we grow a variety of zucchini, snap peas, herbs, broccoli, carrots, tomatoes, and even grapes, along with the occasional other vegetables like radishes and bell peppers. One day I heard something outside my window, which is right above the largest planter box in our garden. I looked outside and saw 2 kids from the neighborhood picking vegetables from the planter box. I ran out and saw that both of them had their arms full of zucchini, carrots, and even some tomatoes. I asked what they were doing, and they replied, "We live in the neighborhood." I told them that those were our vegetables and they couldn't take them. They responded, "It's our neighborhood too. We can have them if we want." And they left before I could stop them, vaulting over the small fence that separates our side yard from the neighbors. These were different neighbors, not the ones who were stealing. A few days later, I heard something outside my window again. I looked out and saw the kid's mom loading a basket with vegetables from the planter. I rushed out and saw her and her kids loading baskets with everything they could grab. I watched as the mom grabbed a handful of the chives I had been growing and pulled them out, roots and all. My mom must have heard me run out because she came out as well. She yelled, asking what they thought they were doing. The kids continued picking vegetables while the mom turned, looking annoyed. "It's everyone's neighborhood and we need the food," she said, still picking from the garden and ruining my prized chives. My mom told her that if she had just asked, we would have given them some. Even if it is everyone's neighborhood, it's our garden. The woman just huffed and left with her kids, and there wasn't anything we could do. Our garden was severely damaged. Our zucchini plants were torn apart, and the peas and tomatoes were trampled and shredded. Our grape bush, which we had for years, was broken at the base, where one of them had stepped on it. We didn't have any fresh vegetables that year, and my mom couldn't make her chocolate chip zucchini bread. A few days later, we installed a lock on the backyard fence. The neighbors came banging on our door, angry that we had installed a lock preventing them from accessing our garden. My mom simply told them to go away and warned that if she saw them in our garden again, she would call the police. Thankfully, we never saw them again, and our garden is thriving now. We even managed to revive the grape bush. Recently, we planted some blueberry bushes in our front yard. Someone keeps taking them, and half the blueberries disappear each season. We allow the neighborhood kids to eat them, but they only take around 8, 10 each day on weekends or during the summer. With 10 bushes in total, each bearing about 100 to 150 blueberries. I wonder who is taking 500 blueberries every year. We haven't caught the culprits yet, but everyone has their suspicions. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.